Okay, so this is Year 9 Maths homework for Mr. Reed's class. It's for week 9, and you'll notice that there's a deadline of the Friday of this week. That's the third strike. I do check homework throughout the week and give you chances to hand it in, first strike, second strike, and so on. That final chance for handing your homework in is on the Friday. There's a little problem with some people in class just dropping into bad habits and missing homework, missing parts of it out, not doing certain questions. I need all questions done in time for this final deadline, so do come and see me if you are struggling and I can possibly help you before school or after school. Let's get on with it then. Question 1. As with all questions, you will need to copy them down so you can then correct them if it goes wrong. We'll fix things with purple pen, and it's difficult to fix things if you haven't written the question down, so please do copy everything down. I've put here, remember to always use BidMaths. That's true of every maths question you ever do. BidMaths is not something you do just because it says BidMaths on the worksheet. You always think about BidMaths when doing any calculation. I'll draw your attention to this part here. For example, I would do this divide before I did this subtract. So whatever this turns into after dividing will be taken from whatever that is. So actually there is some thought required regards BidMaths on this page. We'll look at question 2. Expanding and simplifying. This is an example of just expanding one bracket. Then you've got on question C, expanding a pair of single brackets and collecting things together at the end. That collecting together at the end is what this word's referring to. So after you've multiplied, which you'll do on all questions, multiply, like this, multiply, you'll have to collect things together. On to question 3, factorise fully. This is causing problems for some of you. For example, if I was to say question C needs to go into one bracket, and quite a few of you will identify that 4 divides into both parts, and you'll put 4 outside your bracket. So if I show you that, you might think to yourself, well, 4 goes out there. But the problem with that is they also both divide by x. So really, I need to put 4x outside of a bracket. It's up to you to decide what goes inside those little question marks there. Well, that's a big hint on that topic for you there. Some of you are not picking a big enough common factor to go outside the brackets, and that's causing problems. You're losing marks. Now, questions 1, 2 and 3 are all one bracket. Some of you have started to take the next step and realise that actually some questions involve 2 brackets. So that's the case for all of these questions here, 2 brackets. And this hint is required because there's quite a few people in the class that are still really struggling and not understanding when to put things into 1 or 2 brackets. The best tip I can give you, and this works nearly all the time, is if there's 2 things in the question like this, it's nearly always just 1 bracket. 2 things in the question, 1 bracket. If there are 3 things in the question like this, it's nearly always 2 brackets. Now there are certain exceptional situations when that's not true, but pretty much for every question we'll be doing in Year 9, 3 things in the question, 2 brackets. And that will get you out of trouble most of the time. Right on to question 4. Standard form. Now this is something we have been studying in class this week, starting lesson on Monday, and there'll be various lessons throughout the week on that. And you need to turn these normal numbers into standard form numbers, and there's techniques discussed in the classroom that will hopefully show you how that works. As with any homework question, if you are stuck, you could always Google the name of the topic and see what comes up. There'll be videos and worksheets and helpful websites showing you what to do there. So turn those into standard form. Question 5. Calculations. Now it does say here, full written method, no calculators. There's a problem with some students in the class not showing any working out, and it does look to me like you're just typing things into a calculator and writing it down. That's not helping you at all. So please, can you show your method? Now there's not much method to show on this first one because the denominators already match. So this would be an example of where you could just write the answer straight down. But on this question here, where you'll have to use common denominators to change the fractions before you can add them, that requires a method that you need to show me. Same here, you'll have to turn this into 3 halves. These need conversions before you begin. I'd look out for this here because 4/12 is actually 1/3. So this is 3 1/3. That might be useful. And then on this one here, I'd possibly be tempted to turn this into 7.5 times 0.3. And if you remember, 0.3 is 3/10. Turning things into fractions can be helpful. On to the next question. Find the area of these shapes. So I've got a rectangle and a triangle. Now the important thing about this question is to read the units carefully. Now if I did not mention this, there'll be 28 people that fall into a trap, and I'll tell you what that trap is. This is in metres and this is in centimetres. You can't work with a mix of units. You need to convert them so they match, and then you need to find the area of the shapes. Same is true here. Remember, if it's a triangle, you don't just do base times height. After you've done base times height, there's a final step with a triangle you need to remember to do. Question 7. And this is the last question. Calculations involving powers of 10. So for example, divide by 10, divide by 100, divide by 1,000, etc. Now there are people in the class that struggle with this occasionally, so it's up to you to work carefully with these questions without a calculator and work out the answers. Now one tip I will give the whole class here is that some people find it useful to draw a diagram like this. Hundreds, tens, units, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, that's thousandths there, and you can just divide up your number into a series of columns and then move it around on this diagram. So if I was to put the number 1.27 into there, so I'm dealing with question B here. 1.27 goes like this, 1.27. And then if I was to times it by 10 squared or times it by 100, it's a matter of moving the number this way. Times by 10 squared means move everything 2 places to the right. Sorry, to the left. Move everything 2 places to the left. The decimal point would stay where it was, and you can take all of the parts of this number. For example, this number here would move 2 places to there. This one would move 2 places to there, and this 7, 1, 2, and so on. So you can move everything along. Now, I'm not going to go through and give you the answers to these questions, but I've given you a major hint here. Drawing one of these diagrams can help you understand how to multiply and divide by powers of 10. Now when you're moving it lots of places like this, so it's going to move 4 times, you sometimes run out of columns, and so it does eventually become difficult to draw a diagram like this, particularly if you add a very big power on this number. But hopefully this will teach you how it works for smaller powers of 10, 100 and 1,000, etc. And if you can do that with smaller ones, you can then understand how it would work with bigger powers. Right, that's it. Come and see me before the deadline if you get stuck.